Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with you tonight. It is so awesome. We are streaming on YouTube, we are streaming on Facebook, and in a couple seconds, we'll be streaming on Rockfin. It's going to be a great program. I got a special guest joining us tonight. It's going to be awesome. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We are going to have a great time. We're here with the Center for Political Innovation. Here I am. Let's get going.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. So glad that you're here. So the way we generally do things here on this podcast, this YouTube stream, is that I give my opening remarks. My opening remarks take place, and as the remarks are going on, I am writing down the Super Chat questions. Then we have a break where I read the names and locations and call out who's there. We find out who's on the other side of the camera. We do the roll call. And then I answer your Super Chat questions for the rest of the night. That's how we do things. So tonight, the opening remarks are going to be very special because we're going to be joined by a special guest, Lily Goldklang, who's in Nicaragua. So if you have a Super Chat, just shoot it in. I'll be writing it down as we go. And I will then we'll do the interview with Lily Goldklang and some other opening remarks I'm going to make on recent events. Then we'll do the roll call, and then I'll answer your Super Chat questions for the rest of the night. So that's how it's going to work. So yeah, all right, here we go. So I'm going to bring on our special guest coming from Managua. We've got Lily Goldklang. Folks know Lily with the Center for Political Innovation. How are you doing, Lily?
I'm good, little tired, but I'm just got, through the revolution anniversary ceremonies and getting ready to head back to the States tomorrow morning, but I'm glad to be here. How are you doing, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I wish I could be there with you, but I was so tired after Kansas and getting ready for Chicago. But I'm glad that you're there representing us as the Center for Political Innovation. I'm really, really glad that you're there in a socialist country in Central America led by revolutionaries who fought against U.S. imperialism. Do you want to describe, first of all, before we get into the ceremony and everything going on, what are some of the real achievements that socialism has brought to the Nicaraguan people that you can observe directly while you're there?
Well, I mean, I don't know where to start with that. Well, first off, I guess I can go back to when they first took power in the 80s. I believe that they had, like Cuba, like other countries, they had the literacy campaign. And they reduced the illiteracy rate from, I believe it was 50% to 13%, which is, just a dramatic increase in literacy, the amount of, people are able to read and people are able to participate in the economy and, make better lives for themselves. Excuse me. Another thing I've noticed, while I've been here is I think I've commented on this before, but the roads are incredible. It might sound like something kind of minute, but the roads are extremely well paved, even in kind of remote areas of the country. Of course, there's still dirt, gravel roads in some places, but where there's a paved road, it's, in America, we got these potholes. I don't see a single pothole here. I'll tell you that. What else? I mean, I've talked to various people who are here about the schools being built, the hospitals. I believe, I think we learned this last time, but worth stating again, Nicaragua, I believe, per person has a higher rate of hospitals than Honduras, or it might actually be they have a lower population and more hospitals. But regardless, I mean, it's pretty big achievements because the government, the Sandinista Popular Revolution government, is based in the Nicaraguan people, based in Nicaraguan working families, and they always say that They are, and it's true, they are concerned with the well-being of Nicaraguan families. And recently, folks in the U.S., I think we would appreciate this a lot. They, amidst the rising fuel prices, with the conflict in Ukraine and such, the government, the presidency, Daniel Ortega, Rosario Murillo, they announced a price freeze where basically all the increase in fuel prices are going to be incurred by the government, and they've guaranteed the fuel prices will not go up until they're going to monitor the situation internationally and see what the next steps are. But for now, the fuel prices are frozen.
Nice.
And I'm thinking to myself, why can't Biden be doing this? Why isn't he doing this? People are outraged over these fuel prices, and Biden's like, oh, I can't do anything. And then if they go down, he's like, I did that. But the government here, they say they reject this kind of neoliberal mentality, and they say, if something's for the people, we'll do it. We'll do it for the people. I think what else? We've gone to some infrastructure programs, and along the highway, you'll see, signs everywhere with Nicaraguan flag and then the flag of some country where they're partnering for infrastructure projects. I see the Chinese flag a lot. And those are some of the achievements of the Sandinista revolution, and they're marching forward every day.
Great. Now, can you talk about the occasion, why you're there, the special occasion that you were invited to Nicaragua for as an international guest representing the Center for Political Innovation?
Absolutely. So, an invitation went out to all basically friends of Nicaragua, people who have come here in the past or expressed, public solidarity and support with Nicaragua for the anniversary of the July 19th Sandinista Revolution. July 19th, 1979 it's a great day for Nicaragua. It was the day that the Sandinistas actually assumed power. Well, of course, it wasn't just the Sandinistas. A lot of people don't know about this, but when they originally took power, it was called the Junta of National Reconstruction. And there was the Sandinistas, there were liberal parties, social democratic parties, progressive parties, even some conservative parties. But essentially, as the Sandinista National Liberation Front was kind of the dominant force because it was really rooted in the people. As it came to dominate this coalition, basically the right wing, you could call it, exited. And they said, no, this is, because they couldn't control it. They exited and went into opposition. But, yesterday, in fact, was 43 years since the Sandinistas assumed power. And the Somoza government, the U.S.-backed dictatorship, he actually, I believe, fell 2 days before July 17th, but 19th is when they officially declared a new government. And it's been 43 years. There was after the Contra War, in which the United States, after the Sandinistas moved to increase popular control over the economy in the 1980s, getting some funding support from Cuba. The Soviets were helping the people of El Salvador wage a war for their, against the U.S.-backed dictatorship, for their human right, the right to life. The U.S. was funding these Contras, terrorists, basically, who were, drug trafficking. And the U.S. Congress, the atrocities of Contras were so bad that the U.S. Congress actually outlawed funding to the Contras, and after which Reagan, in the famous Iran-Contra scandal, to get around this ban, they secretly sold weapons to Iran to fund the Contras, and there was a whole big scandal about it. But then, when Bush came in, everyone forgot about it or something. They lost power because basically the U.S. said that if the people voted for the Sandinistas in 1990, the war would continue, the sanction would continue, the dying would continue. And so the people said, well, they're kind of backed up against a wall. And even with this, the Sandinistas still got, I believe, 45% of the vote. But no, it took 16 parties coalescing together to defeat the Sandinistas. And, that period, from what I've heard, it really was an awful period. The rate of electricity was, I believe, in the 80s, they were kind of limited because of the war on some of their achievements. But the rate of electrification dropped to below 50%. Running water was kind of like, not only was Nicaragua not advancing, in many ways it was regressing to before the revolution because of these neoliberal economic policies. But amidst that, in 2006, Daniel Ortega, the FSLN, Rosario Murillo, they were able to regain power, and they have been, getting stronger and building up ever since.
Well, very good. Now, what was the ceremony that you witnessed today like for the anniversary of the revolution? What took place? What was said?
Sure. Well, it was actually yesterday, but the ceremony was just electrifying. I mean, we were in the central plaza in Managua, the Plaza de la Revolucion, and Plaza of the Revolution, and we saw, I believe we started, they always have kind of a band playing some Sandinista music. I'd learned some of it before because they've actually got some of their music on Spotify. Look up FSLN on Spotify; they're on there. So I knew some of the songs, was singing along. And then they had Rosario Murillo, the vice president and first lady. She gave a speech, about how Nicaragua was, defending their sovereignty. They want to live in peace, and they want to, live in peace, and they want to grow and have justice for all their people. And then this was actually surprising. I learned a little bit. I learned about St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a small Caribbean nation. But they had the president there, the president Ralph Gonsalves, and he was given a medal by Daniel Ortega, and he was a guest of honor. And he gave, short remarks, maybe 15 minutes. He said, what is it? I believe he said, I come from a small country, but this country subscribes to big principles, large principles, the defense of sovereignty, non-interference in others' affairs. And he was standing in complete solidarity with Daniel Ortega, the Sandinista revolution. And he said the Sandinista revolution is our revolution. And it was really beautiful, I thought. And another interesting thing, kind of when Daniel Ortega, before he spoke, he was introducing everyone who was sitting around him. There was a long table of, friends of the Sandinistas, friends of the Frente. And, they were saying, okay, they had someone from one of Correa's friends, right? Rafael Correa in Ecuador. They had someone from Ecuador. They had, someone representing the government of Honduras, of Xiomara Castro. And they had People's Republic of China. And then when they introduced, I don't think Sergei Lavrov was not here, but it was a surrogate, someone, in place of Sergei Lavrov of the Russian Federation. And there was a giant applause, huge cheering, much more than, of course, everyone's applauding for everyone. But when they said Russian Federation, everyone stood up and was like, woo! And that's, yeah. And then Daniel Ortega, he spoke. And he was talking, my Spanish is not that good. I maybe understood 30% of what he was saying. But he basically was talking, he was talking about Nicaragua's history and United States. And I mean, just from listening to this guy and from what I was someone translated to me afterwards, he's very well read, very smart guy. He was talking about, I believe, how Nicaragua had their own liberal revolution in 1893, inspired by the French Revolution, in which the conservative oligarchy was defeated by the liberal, also oligarchy, but they were inspired by, he said, fraternity, égalité, liberté, égalité, fraternité. And he also talked about Haiti, their struggle. And one thing that struck me was he was talking about United States always lectures these countries, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba, Russia, China, Iran, lectures them about concept human rights. And he kept saying human rights. And then he said, what has America done? They colonized, Latin America, Asia, Africa, or they went all around the world. Or these powers that criticize us for human rights, they went all around the world. They took slaves from Africa like animals, and treated them like animals. And, he was basically just pointing out the hypocrisy of America going around saying, oh, we believe in human rights, and, Nicaragua is evil dictatorship and stuff like that. But when they are kind of, throwing stones from a glass house, essentially. And yeah, that was kind of it for the ceremony. It was very electrifying. Millions, well, not millions, but thousands of people were there. There were people from Mexico, Argentina, Peru, all over Latin America. People were, lots of people were coming. A lot of left groups from Latin America that I, met for the first time. It was really interesting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about international friends. I know there's a lot of folks that are there from different countries. You're there from the United States, but who's there from around the world?
Yeah, of course. Well, around the world, wow. I would say it was mostly Western Hemisphere, right? There was a couple people from Britain, but largely, it was people from Latin America. I did meet one guy, Adrian, very nice fellow. He's from Ireland. He's actually a member of Sinn Féin. And he is, he's anti-imperialist, socialist, supports China and all that. And, I learned about Irish history from him, some stuff. I was talking about that one song you sang. What is it? Skibbereen? What's it called? Yeah, that one. Yeah, the Irish song. And he really liked it. Anyway, so I met people from Mexico, people from universities in Mexico. I met people from Peru, Argentina, Chile. I think. Also met from the United States. There weren't a lot of people from the States, but there was the Black Alliance for Peace, Margaret Kimberly. She was there. I met her.
Great folks, yeah.
Yeah, great folks, great anti-imperialist activists. Of course, who's going to be speaking at our conference? Dan Kovalik was there. We hung out a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
And, Venezuela, people from Venezuela, William Cavacaro, and people from the Alliance for Global Justice, from Mexico, from the United States, kind of just people from all over, really.
Well, and let me ask you, what insights can you gain from the way the Sandinistas conduct themselves, their program, how they won over the masses? What insights does that give you for maybe socialist organizing in the United States?
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you one thing. It's very, very different. It's apparent to me it's very, very different from a lot of what the left in America, or what's called the left in the United States, does. Mm-hmm. The Sandinistas, because it's a people's government, the people are very socially conservative, So they are not talking about all these, social issues. They're not saying advocating for oppression of any group, but, their emphasis is on families, is on, the people of Nicaragua. And another thing I found interesting was Daniel Ortega, as part of his speech, he was talking about the hypocrisy of the United States government. He was saying He was basically saying that America is not what they do around the world. It's not Christian. There's no Christianity at all in it.
Wow.
Because the Sandinistas, and they emphasize this multiple times, Rosario, Daniel Ortega, they emphasize Christianity, socialism, and solidarity. That's their motto, their slogan of the Sandinistas. And they emphasize that. And, I'm not necessarily saying, we should one-to-one apply that to the United States.
Sure.
But the point is that this, they are appealing and representing the broad masses of people in Nicaragua.
Yeah.
And in the United States, if we are going to represent the broad masses of people in the United States, we have to be focusing on bread and butter stuff, anti-imperialism, healthcare, education, infrastructure. And, it's okay to have, I guess, these kind of intellectual, future conversations, or, getting deep into whatever identities or whatever. But that is not mass politics. And that's not what the Sandinistas do.
I guess before you go, I'll ask you if you have any like little stories. When I travel to socialist countries, often it's like little conversations I'll have with people or little things I'll notice that'll really stick with me. So has there been any interactions that you've had in Nicaragua that really stuck with you?
There's a couple, if you'll allow me the time.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Well, this was another time I was here, but it was a younger Sandinista, right? There's a couple interesting things about this. So we were talking, and my broken Spanish, right? But I was able, we were able to talk, and we were talking about history, right? Soviet Union, Stalin, Lenin, World War II, and stuff like that. And he really liked Stalin, right? He liked him so much to the point where he didn't think it was socialist after Stalin. He believed, they restored capitalism in 1956. He liked Brezhnev because of the aid he gave to Nicaragua. Really didn't like Gorbachev, which, we agreed on that. But so I asked him, I said, so are you like an anti-revisionist? And he's like, no, because we have to actually do stuff here. I can't be that. Where it's like, he does have these views that if he was in the West, he would be someone in one of these tiny sects, not accomplishing anything. But because he's part of a mass organization, because he's part of a mass movement, he may have these views, but he realizes to make real accomplishments, to have real goals that you want to accomplish, you kind of have to, be a populist, work for the people. And, and secondly, he was gay. He was gay as well. And he essentially, his mentality to Westerners because some, more maybe synthetic left people would say to the Sandinistas, why don't you have gay marriage? Why don't you have abortion? Why don't you have all this? Because it's true, the Sandinistas do not have abortion. The Sandinistas do not have gay marriage. And he said, I think he said something along the lines of, can these gringos fuck off? Because he was basically saying, we're trying to build up our country, and here you come with your, sure, he might want, gay marriage or maybe abortion. I don't know about the abortion, but definitely, might rather have Nicaragua have gay marriage. But he realizes that is not what they need to be focusing on. What they need to be focusing on is raising up people from poverty, building schools, building hospitals, building infrastructure. And today, I had a taxi driver, and we're talking a little bit, and he was telling me that he liked Danielle, he liked Rosario, and he was saying he was watching the TV last night, watching their speeches. And I was asking him a little bit about himself, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm a Sandinista. He was 64, I believe. And then he told me, I was surprised. He told me he was a fighter. He was a fighter in 79 to 82, was fighting the Contras. And he showed me he had like bullet scars on his lower abdomen. I was like, whoa. And I was like, wow, you never know who you run into in Nicaragua. So I thought that was really interesting. And another story. Just kind of when you ask people about the 1990s, it's kind of like a dark feeling you get because, that was when the Sandinistas were out of power, and people remember it very, very badly. The taxi driver I had, he fled the country. He went to Mexico. I think he tried to flee the United States. They wouldn't let him in.
Oh, wow.
But But so he went back to Nicaragua in the early 2000s, I think, before the Frente won, the FSLN. And he's a staunch Sandinista. Wow, going all the way back.
Wow.
There's a lot of great stories. Just kind of another thing I've noticed is, this is my own observation, but there's also facts to back it up. It's a very, very safe country. Obviously, for instance, with the police, right? I'm a white person. I don't experience, racism from the police like black people do. But even in the United States, I feel a little nervous around the police. I think most Americans are starting to become that as the low-wage police state, is put into motion.
Sure.
But in Nicaragua, it's totally different environment. The police, there's kind of it's a feeling, like there's kind of an atmosphere of the police and the people are one. They're not contradicting forces. And I feel safer here, honestly, than I do in the United States. Even though I'm not, experiencing police violence and repression every day, but I feel safer here, which is interesting, I think. And Nicaragua actually has the lowest murder rate in Central America.
Wow.
There is kind of this instability in Guatemala and Honduras to some extent, but not in Nicaragua. Nicaragua, with the Sandinistas, has kind of been immune to it, right? And there's this whole there's this whole mass migration crisis going on.
Yeah.
Where people are fleeing Central America, going to the border and America, and are dying on the way. But the mass migration crisis, people have not been fleeing Nicaragua en masse on the levels that we've seen in these other countries, because the Sandinistas are really investing in their community and trying to build up.
Yeah, that's an important thing to point out, is all these people on the border are coming from countries where neoliberal free market policies have really devastated communities. I mean, these are folks from Honduras and Guatemala, from parts of Mexico, that have just been devastated by the free market, whereas Nicaragua, a strong socialist country, offers a much higher life expectancy and living conditions for the people. And that's provable. Just look at the data. So I think that's a very important point to make. Is that we hear that America's so great because all these people are fleeing, but they're fleeing from free market neoliberal policies the United States imposes around the world.
Yeah. Another thing I found interesting was kind of, obviously the government of the Sandinistas was one of, I believe, the first to recognize, or if not recognize, basically support the recognition of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics in Russia, right?
Oh, very good.
Yeah, before the special military operation. So I was aware that the government was in favor of it. But something I noticed, anecdotally while being here, is the people are pro Russia, right? I saw a woman when we're waiting for there were some fireworks July 18th, when it was going to be midnight, July 19th, they were going to do fireworks. And it was this kind of block party. And there was this woman had, pictures of Daniel Ortega on her shirt. She had the Nicaraguan flag on one side and the Russian flag on the other side.
Wow.
And, the support for Russia here is, it's noticeable. I found that very interesting.
Very good. All right. Any final thoughts you want to give before you say goodnight?
I think, being here in a socialist country, not only is it an amazing feeling, the feeling you got when you were in Ecuador and the North Koreans arrived and you said, these are my people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that, but I also feel being here, seeing it for yourself is in itself, without any dissertation or study or anything, is a refutation of the mainstream media lies. Seeing socialism with your own two eyes, debunks the New York Times, debunks the Washington Post, debunks CNN, and all that.
Right. Your family was quite nervous before you went to Nicaragua the first time, actually, right? I mean, they thought it wasn't going to be safe and all of that. And now this is the third time you've been to this socialist country, and you're telling me you feel quite safe there.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Yeah, it's a very safe place. And I hope to return at some point in the future.
Yeah, well, we want to set up a lot more delegations to Nicaragua, but also to Venezuela, to other socialist countries. I know this is the third time we've been invited as the Center for Political Innovation. And, we may be organizing some delegations to Venezuela soon and other countries. And, our hope is to eventually, send folks to North Korea, send folks to Cuba. We need to get people into socialist countries to see them up close. And our leaders do everything they can. You were not able to fly directly to Nicaragua. You had to fly to Costa Rica, I believe, right? That you can't get a direct flight because of the U.S. sanctions.
You can't get a direct flight. And the flights, you get it connecting through El Salvador, but still, I mean, compared to Costa Rica, even with, taking taxi, bus from the border all the way here, it's kind of a bit of a trek. Even with all that, it's still, because of the sanctions, it's still cheaper than flying into Managua.
Wow.
Flying into Managua, I believe, is like 3 times the cost of flying into Costa Rica.
Wow.
It's insane.
That's really, really great that you're there. I know you'll be back tomorrow. So we'll be happy to have you back, and you're going to be in Chicago for our great conference.
Absolutely.
And I hope that you and other CPI members are back in Managua soon. So thank you for everything that you do. Shout out to Lily Goldklang. Do you want to give folks your Twitter information so they can go follow you on Twitter?
Sure.
What's your Twitter info?
People want to go follow me on Twitter. It's Lily, Lily, one L, Goldklang, Goldklang, Lily Goldklang, Lily Goldklang on Twitter. That's me.
Yeah.
Go ahead and follow me. Give me a like, retweet, or whatever. Follow. I've got some videos up from this time in Nicaragua that you might want to check out. I think they're fun videos. So,
and you gave a great talk about the Alex Saab case at our last conference in Austin, Texas. And I know you've written some great articles for the website. I know you're going to definitely write some articles about your recent trip to Nicaragua, I'm sure. Yeah. We're definitely going to put this interview up on the website as well so that people can see it. So that'll be great. So, Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Well, I will see you soon. Folks, we'll see you in Chicago, August 6th at the great conference that we've got coming up. Thanks for everything, Lily, and have a good night, okay?
Thank you, Caleb. Have a good night, man.
Yep. Very good. Wow. That was Lily Goldklang, live from Nicaragua. That was awesome. So glad that she could join us. That was just really, really great. Hey, everybody, thanks for being here. What a great conversation I just had with Lily from the heart of a socialist country. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. If there's something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, all you have to do is just hit the super chat, send me a super chat, and I will do it in the second half of the show. Now, I mentioned our conference coming up on August 6th. I'm actually gonna, I think I'm gonna pull up the poster for that just so that you all can see it. And just give you a quick reminder about it before I make some remarks about an important recent event that is really important. So let me just pull up the poster. Just pulling up the poster for our Chicago event because I want to make sure that you all get reminded of it. You don't want to miss our conference coming up in Chicago. So here we are. Here we are. All right. There we go. This is our conference coming up in Chicago. It's going to be at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Deerfield, Illinois. It's about 15 minutes out from Chicago in Illinois, Deerfield, Illinois. Keynote speaker is going to be Tara Reid, the outspoken advocate for the rights of women, anti-imperialist journalist, writer, and open and refusing to back down as someone who was attacked, sexually assaulted by Joe Biden. She will be speaking. She'll be one of our first speakers. We're also going to hear from the great Peter Coffin. He will be there speaking. We're going to hear from Dan Kovalik, the anti-imperialist writer, the plot to attack Russia, the plot to attack Venezuela, the plot to scapegoat Russia, the plot to attack Iran. And we're also going to be hearing from Garland Nixon, the great radio host with Sputnik Radio. He's going to be there. That's going to be awesome as well. There's going to be great music. I'll be there. Other guests and friends of the Center for Political Innovation will be there. So you don't want to miss this conference that we are having for the Center for Political Innovation in the Chicago area, August 6th. Doors open at 1 p.m. on August 6th at the Deerfield Plaza Hotel. Unite against the imperialists. If you'd like to send a donation, because we do need all the help we can get. Folks are coming in from out of town to help us. We got musicians coming in. We got a camera crew who's going to video record the whole thing and all that. If you want to send us a donation, please send us a donation at CPI Events on Cash App. That'll be the place to send a donation if you want to help us out with the event. That would be awesome. I hope to see a lot of you there. It's going to be great. I also wanted to mention I did get to posting one of the classes that we had at our recent retreat in Kansas. The class I did on William Z. Foster just went up on the YouTube channel today. I'm editing the class we did on Sam Marcy. That'll be coming out. There's more classes coming up. Folks are editing their classes. I'll be, people are editing these classes. They'll be gradually posted on not only on my own personal channel, but on the CPI YouTube channel. So I want folks to check that out. That will be awesome. That will be great. So there you go. Just wanted to mention that conference coming up. Hope to see you there. All right, folks. So now here's the moment where I'm going to talk about a very, very important recent event that just happened. I don't know if folks saw that in Georgia, there was a SWAT team that raided a house. The report is there was someone in the house who called 911, said they were being held against their will. The police showed up, and there is one young man who was, I believe, 20 years old, 19 years old, young African-American man is dead. We don't know how he died. We don't know the cause of death. There are some reports saying that he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. There are other reports that say the police killed him, and there are yet other reports that say, that someone else killed him. We don't know what happened, and there's an ongoing investigation about it. Now, we don't know what happened, okay? But we do know that this house was being used by a very controversial black communist organization called Black Hammer. And, we don't know what happened in this house. We don't know what happened in this house. Let me repeat that. We don't know what happened in the house. A dead body was found in the house. We don't know if the person shot themselves. We don't know if they were killed by the police. We don't know we don't know what happened, okay? But I really want to emphasize something because, look, I am not a fan of Black Hammer. I mean, I gave them a couple sentences. I attacked them in my BreadTube book. Some of the stuff that they do is not good. And that doesn't fucking matter. Doesn't matter, right? Look, I'm not going to, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to go over everything that they've ever done. But they're a group. They're a black nationalist communist organization. And they have offended a lot of people, and they've done a lot of things over the years that people don't like, and that does not matter. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. I don't care. Folks, being an asshole is not a crime in the United States of America. You can be an asshole, and many people would look at some of the things that they've done and not approve, and I am one of those people. I criticize them in my BreadTube book. They attacked me once on Twitter, and I blocked them. None of that matters. What matters is that the leader of their organization is currently in police custody, facing heavy charges. It may be that they end up trying to pin the death of this man on the organization. What matters is that now that, that these people, that this person has been arrested and charged with crimes, that there is a huge campaign on the internet among communists to say they deserve it. And that is not the correct attitude to have. It's not the correct attitude to have. Because if they come for them in the morning, they come for us at night. If they come for one of us, they come for all of us. And again, if this is government repression and targeting of this organization, I'm sure it's not because of the offensive stuff they've said on the internet. If this is a case of government heavy-handed repression of a group, it probably has more to do with the fact that they support Russia and that they protested outside of CNN's offices waving the Russian flag. It probably has to do with the fact that they're sympathetic to DPRK and that they're sympathetic to anti-imperialist and socialist states. And they're not fans of me. I'll tell you that much. They've blocked me. They hate me. They don't like me. They've tweeted negative things at me. I don't care, because everybody who is now using this opportunity to call them a cult, to call them anti-Semitic, to call them fascist, to accuse them of crimes, what you're doing is you are setting up an atmosphere where it will be easy for some kind of frame up to go down. Look, folks, David Koresh, do you folks know about Waco? There was a very famous incident, Waco, Texas, back in, 1993, 1992. There was this minister, David Koresh. He was an awful guy, right? He was, not a good dude. But the U.S. government used the fact that David Koresh was not a good dude to firebomb the place and kill all these people. Children were burned alive. And yeah, David Koresh was not a good dude. He was a bit of a sexual predator. He was an egotistical narcissist. But that didn't justify firebombing the compound and killing everybody. And this is what the government does when they are trying to go after somebody. They set up a campaign that says, oh, they probably deserved it. They probably deserved it. They're no good. You don't know what happened in that house. Unless you were in that house, you don't know what happened in the house. I don't know what happened in the house. The facts will surface, evidence will come, and we'll know what happened in the house. But what they've said over the years, offensive positions they've taken, have absolutely nothing to do with this case. All right, what do you think of Sukarno in Indonesia? All right, writing it down. Thank you for the super chat. Keep the super chats rolling in. I got to talk about something in the second half of the program. But it has absolutely nothing to do with the case. Nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with the case. We don't know. We don't know what happened. And that the language that they have used against them is part of the cancel culture. I'll be real. I don't like them because of some of the things that they've said about me. I don't like them because of some of the things that they've said about I don't like some of the things that they've said about different groups, etc., different historical figures. But that's not the thrust of what we're hearing on the internet, right? Okay. That is not the thrust of what we're hearing on the internet. Wrote it down, by the way. Wrote it down. What we're hearing on the internet is that they are a quote-unquote cult. All right? We're hearing that they're a cult. Well, it's not a crime to be a cult. The Jehovah's Witnesses knock on my door all the time. They're a cult. The Mormons knock on my door all the time. They're definitely a cult. Joseph Smith had multiple wives and found golden plates. And, they're definitely a cult. Not a crime to be a cult. And furthermore, the allegation against them is they're tankies, right? They say they're tankies. They support Russia. And they had a protest at CNN's headquarters, waving Russian flags. That's how much they support Russia. And, yeah, all right, Red Dean of Canterbury. None of that is a crime. But if you listen to the Rad Libs, you listen to Vosh, you listen to Thought Slime, you listen to Sophie from Mars, you listen to people like that, they think that they deserve to die for that. That's what they think. I mean, they think I deserve to die for the positions I've taken. They've called Center for Political Innovation a cult. And they think that they say that anybody who supports North Korea or supports Cuba or supports Iran or supports Russia, they say that you're the equivalent of a Nazi and you deserve to die. That is why they want to see this group prosecuted. They weren't in the house. They don't know what happened, right? Now, is it possible that this group, did something bad? Of course it's possible, but they're innocent until proven guilty. And their political positions have absolutely nothing to do with this issue, right? And let me remind you all, they have been really hateful towards me. They have been really nasty toward me, and I don't care because I understand how this works. I've been widely attacked. If you watch one of these hate videos they made about me, they quoted me as saying, "I will never disavow anti-imperialists." And they quoted me as saying that, and they said, that's clearly a dog whistle to Nazis. That's a way to signal to Nazis that he's okay with Nazis. Well, actually, that's a statement of principle. When the U.S. government points missiles at North Korea, I'm on North Korea's side. When the U.S. government wants to execute Mumia Abu Jamal, a black freedom fighter, I'm on Mumia's side. When Waco, Texas, when they were threatening and ultimately firebombed this whole compound of Christians in Texas because they said the leader was in a cult, doesn't matter. I was on David Koresh's side. And, when the U.S. imperialists point their guns at Iran, when they point their guns at Venezuela, when the police murder an innocent black man, I am for the oppressed. I'm for the oppressed, not the oppressors. I'm against the U.S. imperialists and their state. And so when I see them grab a group of black revolutionaries and accuse them of a crime, I'm going to be suspicious. And I'm not going to join a smear campaign on the internet that says, oh, well, they disagree with me. They disagree with me. So, you know what I mean? They disagree with me, so they deserve it. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. And folks, if they end up charging them with murder, if they end up trying to frame them up and say they killed this guy, or if it turns out they actually did, we don't know the facts. We don't know what happened. We should wait for the facts, not let the media tell us what happened, not trust mainstream media. We should do our own investigations. But if they try to frame them up for killing this guy, or if they actually did kill this guy, or whatever, they're going to use it against all anti-imperialists. They're going to say that anybody who supports Russia is a crazy extremist like Black Hammer. They are going to say anybody who is sympathetic to North Korea is a crazy extremist like Black Hammer. They are going to say that anybody, that's what they're going to do. And so they will use this against all of us. And that's why it is really important that even though we don't like Black Hammer, we reject their racial separatist line. You know, we support their right to have, you know, their Black separatist organization. We support the right of Black people to choose to separate or integrate for themselves. But we want an organization of Black and white workers together. And even though we reject some of the hateful things they've said about different groups, we reject that. We know that's not why the U.S. government's coming for them. And now is not the time to criticize them. Now is the time to point out that they're innocent until proven guilty. Now is the time to point out that we don't know how this individual died. We don't know what happened. We don't know what happened, right? Thank you, Tyler. Wow. Great statement, Tyler. You know, and absolutely. And, you know, the whole country's changing. We're all waking up. But at times like this, we have to make clear we don't know. We don't know what actually happened. We don't know what happened in that house in Georgia. And that now is not the time to join a campaign that will ultimately be used against all of us. You know, I really hope that that no one gets hurt. I hope that I hope that this case is not as bad as it might look. I don't know that they're innocent. They could be guilty. I'm not ruling that out. It's possible. It's very possible that this group did something reprehensible. And, you know, obviously I don't defend any reprehensible behavior, but it's important for us not to help them be, you know, help set the case for political repression that may not be deserved. That's what I'm saying. And that is really, really important. And this is a nuanced position to take, right? This is a very, very nuanced and careful position to take. We don't want to, here Jessica says it reminds her of the MOVE bombing. 1985 in Philadelphia, you know, there was a religious group called the MOVE organization, a Black revolutionary organization led by a guy named John Africa. And, you know, their beliefs were pretty off the wall and wacky. They protested against the zoos. They didn't believe in eating meat. They were kind of a weird anarcho-vegan Black liberation group. Everyone in the group changed their last name to Africa. But the government of Philadelphia firebombed them, right? Just like in Waco a few years later, they firebombed them and murdered these Black revolutionaries, firebombed their home, killed them. And again, you know, did they do that because they were weird and they didn't eat meat? Did they do that because they protested the zoo? Did they do that because they didn't collect their garbage? They didn't pick up their garbage in the neighborhood? Of course not. They did it because they were a group of Black revolutionaries. They were a group of Black revolutionaries who had armed themselves and were practicing armed self-defense in an urban center called Philadelphia. And the state was threatened by them. And the U.S. imperialists and the U.S. imperialist state often will go after groups that haven't done anything wrong. Look, they put the National Board of the Communist Party in federal prison in 1948. 12 of the leaders of the Communist Party went to federal prison. And what did they send them to federal prison for? They said they were conspiring to teach an ideology that might lead one to the conclusion that the violent overthrow of the U.S. government was necessary. So they never charged them for preaching the violent overthrow of the government because they didn't do that. They preached a peaceful transition to socialism. They didn't even charge them with preaching an ideology that would lead one to that conclusion. They charged them with conspiring to teach an ideology that might lead to violence. That's what they charged them with. And for that, they sent them to prison for 8 years, 8-year prison sentences, just for selling books by Lenin and, forming a political party. They had a 1945 convention. They reestablished the Communist Party. It had dissolved during World War II to become the Communist Political Association. And they threw them in prison. Right now, many people have criticism of the Communist Party. They think the Communist Party was too reformist or this or that, but doesn't matter, right? They obviously threw them in jail because they were a revolutionary anti-imperialist organization. It had nothing to do with the law. It wasn't about right or wrong. It was about trying to silence dissent. There are loads of black revolutionaries who've been framed up over the years. Many black revolutionaries over the years have been charged with trying to bomb something when it was clearly all just made up by the police. Read all about COINTELPRO, folks. Read about COINTELPRO and the FBI counterintelligence program. All kinds of groups got targeted in different ways. The LaRouche organization, when they were the National Caucus of Labor Committees, the police raided one of their homes and claimed they were making a bomb underneath the refrigerator. And they didn't have any evidence, and it all got thrown out of court. But that was back in the early 70s, and they spent a lot of money trying to get their members out of jail. And Noam Chomsky sent them a donation, and they ultimately beat the charge and proved they hadn't been making a bomb. But that was what they did. This is how police agencies target revolutionary activists. They tend to target revolutionary activists by just making stuff up, and it gets thrown out in court in a lot of cases. But then they have to spend loads of money on lawyers, and it's a way of shutting down dissident organizations. Look, there was a revolutionary named Geronimo Pratt. You can read about Geronimo Pratt. Google Geronimo Pratt. He was a leader of the Black Panthers. He was a leader of the Black Panther Party in California, and they arrested him for a murder. And at his trial, at his defense, he had a very coherent argument. He said, I am a trained marksman by the U.S. military. I've won awards for my sharpshooting, but even I cannot hit a target 200 miles away. When these murders took place, I was at a meeting of the Black Panther Party 200 miles away. And they said, do you have any proof that you were at this meeting of the Black Panther Party? He said, yes, I do. The FBI had bugged the meeting. They have proof I was there because they surveilled me at the meeting. And so the court subpoenaed the FBI. And what did the FBI do? They said, we lost the records. Can't find it. And so he was convicted. And for years, he sat in prison for a murder that he didn't commit. And then in the 90s, the FBI suddenly found the papers that proved that he was at this meeting and didn't conduct the murders. So Geronimo Pratt, a black revolutionary activist, sat in prison for years for a murder that the FBI knew he didn't commit. And when it was time for the FBI to show up to show their paperwork, they just couldn't find it, and he went to prison. Right? Yeah, you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. Exactly. And that they do this, right? We don't know what happened. Some of the reports I've seen say this guy shot himself. They say that he was having some kind of psychotic episode, and he made a disturbing phone call, and then when the police got here, he was dead because he shot himself. Maybe that's what happened. We don't know, right? We haven't seen the coroner reports, but we do know that they have imprisoned the leader of this group, and we need to look at this in perspective. We need to not be thinking about our own egos. We need to not be having a political debate about all of the awful things this group has said, because they have said awful things. And I have been one of the first to criticize them. And they hate patriotic socialism. I'll tell you that. They hate the flag. They hate patriotic socialism. They are not friends of the CPI, right? And I criticize them in my BreadTube book. We are not supporters of their political line, but that doesn't matter, because our attitude in this movement needs to be, if they come for one of us, they come for all of us. They come for one of us, they have to deal with all of us. That needs to be our attitude. Same applies to Alex Saab. The same applies to Mumia Abu-Jamal. The same applies to any revolutionary force, right? Is that we need to be not supporting the government and trying to silence them and lock them up, right? That is our responsibility as revolutionaries in situations like this. We can't trust the U.S. government and the state. And the fact that there is so much of a hate campaign against them on the internet right now indicates to me that there is some foul play. look, we know how much they've lied about me on the internet, right? I'm completely different than Black Hammer, right? They're black nationalists. I am, you know, a white dude building a patriotic socialist think tank. But they have smeared me with the exact same hits. They've called CPI a cult, which is ridiculous. They have done all kinds of nasty, hateful things. You know, we've had to have security at our meetings because they send people with weapons to try and attack us. You know, and why are they doing that? Why are they doing that to our group? Why have we been targeted by these bread tubers? Why are there big, long 2-hour films about us, demonizing us and saying things that are just utter bullshit about us and just straight up lying about us? Why is that the case? Why have they gone out of their way to slander our name everywhere? Because they want to set the stage for doing the same thing to our organization, right? That's what they want to do. Ultimately, they want to do the same thing to us. They would like to have a situation where they could throw us in prison and no one comes to our defense, where, oh, everyone knows, everyone thinks they're an expert about us. Oh, I watched the documentary, they're bad. And so then no one opposes it. That's what they're trying to do. That's what these internet smear campaigns are about. It's about trying to shut down dissent. That's what BreadTube is about. So many young people are getting interested in communism and socialism now. So it's about cultivating those young people to support government repression. Right? BreadTube is telling everyone to cooperate with the FBI against QAnon people. And I would never do that. Right? If there was somebody in my family who was part of QAnon, I would not turn them in. Right? You know, it's not a crime to believe in conspiracy theories. Right? You know, and I mean, that's what Vosh is telling people to do. Turn in their relatives. Right? Cooperate with the FBI. Right? You know, I mean, this is disturbing stuff. Right? The deep state are not our friends. The FBI is not our friends. The CIA are not our friends. And that when they're coming after imperialist forces, no matter what our differences are with them, that is not the time for us to lay out our great criticism of the group, right? And that's what I really want people to understand about this Black Hammer situation. That's what I really want people to hear. And it's not easy to do. And I've had a lot of people say to me, come on, Caleb, come on. No, don't choose this hill to die on. Don't choose this hill to die on, Caleb. It's not about picking the hill to die on. It's not about agreeing with them. It's about making clear that, I'm sorry, but what's this? Look, it's not about at the end of the day, it is not about what, I mean, when people are getting shot, when SWAT teams are storming into people's buildings, that's not internet debate anymore. All right, when the FBI is knocking on people's doors, when people are getting dragged before congressional committees, when people are getting big prison sentences, when people are getting killed in their homes like Fred Hampton was, that's not internet debate. That's real life, my friends. And real life is not an internet debate. You don't gain anything in real life by owning somebody. Right? That doesn't help our movement in any way. If you own somebody, you expose them. I debated them, bro. I exposed their political line. Look how smart I am. You don't, in real life circumstances where SWAT teams are raiding people's homes, where the FBI is knocking on people's doors, where people are going to jail, where, you know, Fred Hampton gets gunned down in his apartment with 200 bullets, where Waco, the compound, gets firebombed. Where the MOVE organization get firebombed and John Africa gets burned alive. Yeah, exactly. I'm writing this down. This is real life, folks. This is real life. And in real life, our movement suffers. Our movement suffers when they do this to anybody. And I also, folks, I have rambled on here about Steve Hassan and how much I don't like Steve Hassan. And I was thinking about this today because Steve Hassan, right? Steve Hassan, the big cult expert who's on CNN, wants us all to be deprogrammed from the cult of Trump. Steve Hassan,
who did hit pieces on the MOVE organization. Recently he's interviewed ex-members of the MOVE organization. He's trying to accuse them of being a cult. He's gone after Trotskyist groups in Britain that are critical of U.S. support for Israel and UK support for Israel. And Steve Hassan, he's this big cult expert. He's exposing cult mind control. He's going to expose. He talks like this. I'm going to expose cult mind control and brainwashing. I've got a cult that I want Steve Hassan to check out. I know about this crazy, extreme mind control cult. And when you join it for 8 weeks, they take you to a place where they don't let you sleep, and they control what food you eat, and they pump you full of ideology, and they exercise you to the point that you're so tired you can't think. And they brainwash you to think that one country is superior to all countries in the world. And then after you've been brainwashed by this evil cult, they send you to other countries where you kill people and you murder people and you shoot them down. And you know what? This evil cult that has hundreds of thousands of members who get brainwashed, for 8 weeks in their sleep deprivation facilities and pumped full of ideology before being sent around the world to engage in terrorism and violence and murder people. This cult is called the U.S. military. When is Steve Hassan going to do a great expose about the U.S. military and their brain control, brainwashing, operations? I'm waiting for his big expose of all the cult mind control of the U.S. military. When is he going to do that? When is he going to expose what goes on in military boot camps? When is he going to expose the supremacist ideology that says America is the greatest country in the world and it was okay to invade Iraq even though they didn't have weapons of mass destruction and gun down and kill hundreds of thousands of Iraqis? When is Steve Hassan going to expose that cult? Oh, here's another one. Here's a cult that people join. They join this group. And they take them up into the mountains of Utah and Idaho, and they work on them for 6 months. And they tell them that they're on a special mission to rid the world of communism, and that they should have loyalty to this cult, and they take them up in the mountains and they brainwash them and they send them out, and then this group goes and violates the civil liberties of Americans. And they spy on Americans, and they break the law, and they infiltrate leftist organizations, and they arrange for groups to be suppressed. What's this cult called? What's this evil cult? What's this evil cult that brainwashes its members as part of its training, and then sends them to violate the constitutional rights of the American people? Well, that cult is called the FBI. And don't tell me the FBI is not a cult. They worshipped J. Edgar Hoover at one point, and their training is very much a brainwashing operation. So when is Steve Hassan going to expose the evil cult called the FBI? I'm waiting for him to expose them. This guy, he claims he was victimized by the Unification Church, this right-wing group from Korea. But it's really interesting because he admits that the Unification Church was set up by the CIA. That's what he admits. He admits that the CIA set up the Unification Church, this group that brainwashed him, that he was victimized by. But it's funny because I never hear him going against the American government. He says that China is a political cult. He says Russia is a political cult. And he goes on the mainstream networks of CNN and MSNBC as an expert. And they bring him on there. And he bashes Russia and he bashes China, basically working for the same government that supposedly victimized him. So, Steve Hassan and all this cult stuff needs to just be gotten rid of. I'm at the point I don't want to hear anyone tell me about cults anymore until they tell me that the U.S. military is a cult, that people need to be deprogrammed from. Until they tell me that, I'm not interested in hearing any of this cult stuff. And it's not a crime to be a cult, right? I mean, America is cult land. If there's ever been a country in American history that has had cults, if there's ever been a country in world history that has cults in it, it's America. I mean, the Pilgrims who came over here, the Shakers and the Quakers and the Seventh-day Adventists and the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses. Cults are about as American as apple pie, right? I mean, America should have the word cult in its name. It should be the United States of cults, right? We love cults over here. We got more cults over here. Cults grow on trees over here, right? I mean, it's like there's practically no wing of this country. You don't have some crazy religious group with some wacky beliefs doing something. So the idea, they're saying that this group Black Hammer, you know, that they had some off the wall beliefs. They said a lot of offensive things. I don't care. I'm sorry. That doesn't justify them being killed. That doesn't prove that they did anything wrong in this situation. And I want us to remember who is the main danger to America's working families. It's Wall Street, it's London, it's the FBI, it's the CIA, it's the Pentagon. That is the enemy of the American working class. That's the enemy of the American working class. That's who the enemy of the American working class is. And I am not going to team up with them. The biggest mass murderers in the world, the biggest terrorists in the world. I'm not going to team up with them to bring down some group just because they've said a lot of offensive things about me, about some other people. Not going to do it, right? I'm not going to help them set the stage for what could be a frame up, right? It's possible. We don't know. We don't know what happened. The facts will surface, right? I'm not saying everyone has to go out and defend them because I don't know the facts of the case. It's possible they did something wrong, but I don't know. I'm just warning people not to do our enemies' work. Don't do our enemies' work for them. You know, make them pay somebody to do it. Don't do it for them for free, right? The state will always come down on Black liberation leaders. Absolutely. Malcolm X, MLK, Huey Newton. You got that right. I'm writing it down. State will always come down on Black liberation leaders. And what did they say after Fred Hampton was killed? What did they call it? What did they call it when Fred Hampton was killed? You know, well, they called it a vicious panther attack. A vicious panther attack is what they called it. The mainstream media lied after they murdered Fred Hampton, and they said it was a vicious panther attack. Vicious panther attack, and that was a lie, right? But you know, they used it to go after him. You know, Fred Hampton supported North Korea. Fred Hampton supported the Soviet Union. Fred Hampton supported China. You know, Vosh, if Fred Hampton were alive today, Vosh would cheer for his murder. That's what Vosh would do. BreadTube would be the first people wanting the Black Panthers to be lined up and shot because BreadTube hates anyone who's anti-imperialist. There would be smear pieces about Fred Hampton all over YouTube if he was alive today. And you know that. You absolutely know that. So we need to be very, very clear about these things, right? That the main danger to humanity is U.S. imperialism, Wall Street, and London. The main threat to American working families is the decaying capitalist system in the United States and the imperialist low-wage police state that's propping it up. We need to be absolutely clear about these things. And I guess I'm repeating myself, but I can't say it enough times because it frustrates me to see this because, you know, this is how we lose, right? This is how we lose, right? In the atmosphere that we've got on Twitter where everyone's bashing everybody else. Oh, you made one mistake. Oh, you said one thing I don't agree with. Oh, well, screw you. That attitude sets the stage for police repression, right? And I will say this. I guess I've commented on this before, but I'll say it again. I have never seen anything like what they are doing to the Revolutionary Communist Party right now. I don't like the RCP. They don't like me. I was with them very briefly when I was in high school. I would go to their bookstore and stuff. And, you know, they're not where I'm at politically, right? They buy into the whole Republicans are Nazis thing. They told everyone to vote for Biden. They endorsed Joe Biden, which for them is hilarious because they were a group that always told people not to vote. And then suddenly, well, you have to vote for Joe Biden because Trump is so bad. And, you know, they're ultra leftists and they don't support Cuba and a lot of socialist countries. And, you know, I have my criticism. RCP is not a good group. Okay. They're not a good communist group in my view. But the way they are being canceled right now is one of the most insane things I've ever seen. They're a group of pro-Democratic Party communists, right? They support the Democrats. They're communists who support the Democrats. So what are they doing? Protesting for abortion. Why? Because that's what Democrats are doing. And you would think the RCP was, you know, like the satanic murderous organization or something. You would think that the RCP, you know, was responsible for the 9/11 attacks. You would think that the RCP like murdered 12 people and ate them for dinner. First, it was Yahoo News. It was the Daily Beast and Yahoo News. Then it was the Intercept. Then it was the then after that, Viktor Orban.
Then it was the latest one. It was the New York Sun. Holy shit. What has this group done wrong? Protested abortion. They ran in some churches, they protested abortion, and they're leading a lot of anti-abortion protests. Well, that's not what I gave a whole talk about how I don't think we should make that the main issue, but so what? They haven't done anything wrong for the most part. I mean, I wish they wouldn't run around churches and act like that, but according to the liberals, they haven't done anything wrong. All they did was protest for abortion. They started a group, Rise Up for Abortion Rights, and protested, and they did really good protests, and they got ahead of the liberals, right? They raised money, they did their theatrical protests, and Sarah Taylor had a protest, and AOC came to it, and now all of these liberals that agree with them, that think abortion is the main issue, are canceling them. They are viciously going after the RCP, calling them a cult, calling them homophobic, calling them transphobic. I mean, every mainstream news outlet, it seems, every day I'm getting a new article about, watch out for Rise Up for Abortion Rights. They're not really an abortion rights group. They're Maoists. They're Stalinists. It's insane. It's insane. And this is proof, folks. This is, and I said this before, but I'm going to say it a little bit differently, but this is proof that if you have any shred of anti-imperialism within you, if you have a single anti-imperialist bone in your body, the Joe Biden coalition doesn't want you. That's really all what we're learning here. Because the RCP told their members to vote for Biden. They ran Refuse Fascism. They were calling Trump a fascist. They had a rally to support James Comey, the FBI director, when he got fired. They did nothing but pander to wokes, do what liberal, aligned communist groups do. And the liberals are now using their media apparatus to try and destroy them. And that shows that if you really oppose these wars, you ain't welcome. You ain't welcome in the Democratic Party. You ain't welcome in the so-called left. The synthetic left doesn't want you around if you're opposed to these wars. You're opposed to these wars. You're opposed to the liberal order. You like Stalin. You like Mao. They don't give a fuck. You can endorse Biden. You can go to their rallies. You can organize around their issues. They don't give a flying fuck. If you're a real communist, they hate you. That's what you need to learn from this, right? And I have never seen anything like this. Sarah Taylor, if you're watching right now, you probably don't like a lot of things that I've said over the years. And I apologize if I've hurt your feelings. But what they're doing to you right now, not acceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. My heart goes out to you, Sarah Taylor. I don't agree with what you're doing right now. I don't think abortion should be the main issue, but you shouldn't be targeted like this. Sarah Taylor, if you're watching, solidarity, sister. I don't agree with what you're doing. I don't think abortion should be the focus, but you don't deserve this. All you did was be a good activist. All you did was be a good activist and protest about an issue that you think is really important. Abortion, right? You think that's really important. You have spent your life organizing around it, and all you did was organize around this, and they are dragging your name through the mud. They are canceling you. They're harassing you. They're demonizing you. Fuck them. Fuck them. You don't deserve this, Sarah Taylor. You don't deserve it. So fuck them for what they're doing to you. And it makes me so angry because, look, folks, people all think it's like something special about me, right? They all think it's like something special about me. Why does everyone hate Caleb? It's not just me. Everyone hates Black Hammer too. Everyone hates Sarah Taylor of the RCP. Everyone hates any socialist group. Anyone who's really organizing anything that is a threat to the liberal order and isn't just going along with the latest hashtag revolution. Anyone who has real ideology and real beliefs gets hit with the same shit. Look what they did to Jimmy Dore. Same thing. All he did was say, force the vote. And these people practically wanted him strung up from a lamppost. I'm sorry, but we have to come to terms with the fact that the liberals and the Democratic Party are not our friends. If you want to stop these wars, if you support Julian Assange, if you are somebody who sees the writing on the wall, who actually challenges the capitalist system, they'll go after you. And no matter how much you pander to these people, no matter how much you suck up to these people, no matter how much you pretend that you want to get along with them and agree with them, they don't fucking care. They don't fucking care. If you aren't part of their woke synthetic left cult, they're the cult if there ever was one. If you're not part of their cult, you're a Nazi and you deserve to die. That's what they think, right? And they want to smear you and set the stage for political repression against you. Fuck that. Fuck that, right? Fuck those people. Fuck those people. These synthetic left wokes are not our friends. And what they're doing to the RCP right now, I don't like the RCP. I've got all kinds of videos. In my video on Mao in the United States, I talk about their history, and I mean, we can talk about the RCP some other time, but they don't deserve this. All they did was protest for abortion. That's all they did. And the liberals want to destroy them because they did a good job of it. That's all they did wrong, is they did a good job organizing around an issue. The liberals are organizing around abortion. The RCP is also organizing around abortion, and they did a pretty good job doing it. And because they did a good job doing it, and because they got ahead and they had some protests, and AOC went to one of their protests, and they disrupted some churches and got on MSNBC, now the liberal order can't stand it. Nobody who likes Stalin is allowed to get attention. Nobody who likes Stalin or likes Mao is allowed to get attention. No. They're not part of the liberal club. No, cancel them, silence them, destroy their reputations, run their name through the mud. Fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. Seriously, fuck that shit. And if you can't see the writing on the wall, that the same stuff they've done to me, the same stuff they've done to Jimmy Dore, the same stuff they've done to Jackson Hinkle, the same stuff they've done to Haas, the same stuff they've done to, anybody, right? Max Blumenthal, anybody. They'll do to you if you're a real anti-imperialist. And it doesn't matter. And anti-imperialists need to stop pandering to these people. We need to get out of the movement and to the masses. Thank you, Jim Garrison, for your super chat. I really do appreciate it. Jim Garrison sent me a super chat on Rockfin. Y'all should sign up on Rockfin because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on this this app on YouTube. I mean, I'm going to stay on here as long as I possibly can. I see Tara Reid is on there. Shout out to you, Tara. And I'm going to be doing my thing. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go away. But Rockfin, you ought to sign up on Rockfin. So all right. Thoughts on punch a Nazi fascist slogan? All right. And, I mean, RCP doesn't deserve it. And we shouldn't be smearing Black Hammer. We should wait for the facts of the case to come out. And look, I mean, this liberal, synthetic left, internet, brainwashed, pseudo-liberal cancel culture club, I mean, if there's ever been a group that is mind controlling, a group that is brainwash oriented, a group that practices thought control, that shuns people, if there's ever been a group that is deeply unhealthy, it's them. I want Steve Hassan to go do an expose of the wokeness on the internet. I'm waiting for that, Mr. Steve Hassan, Mr. CNN. And this is we got to stand up to this, folks, because look, you're either with these people or you're against them. That's the way they operate. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what your position is. You're either with them or against them. The cancel culture club is really dangerous, and you're not allowed to be a real communist. You are not allowed to be an anti-imperialist. You're not allowed to be a real communist, or else you're a Nazi, and they lie about you and they insult you. And, we just need to call them out for what they are. That's why I wrote the BreadTube book, right? That's why I'm on here calling them out. Look what they're doing to the RCP. I get so many people. One of these people was on there the other day. I was tweeting about how I've been smeared, and someone replied, well, maybe you should think about what you do, Caleb, that causes people to do that. Well, look what the RCP did. Maybe they should think about what they did, which is organized around abortion, right? And look what happened to them, right? Maybe Jimmy Dore should think about what he did and actually call for force the vote, right? It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. It does not matter. If you disagree with these clowns, you're immediately a Nazi, a white supremacist, and the government you deserve to be locked up by the government. And they make stuff up and they go after you and they destroy your reputation. It is totalitarianism. It is mind control. It is all or nothing thinking. And then they claim that comes from us, right? You know, that we're the cult. We're not the cult. I just told you, I just shouted out to Sincera Taylor and told you that Sincera, you know, the way they're coming after you is wrong. We don't agree with each other, but I'm with you. I don't even agree with what you're protesting around. I don't even think we should be protesting around abortion, but I still see what they're doing to you, Sincera, and it's fucking wrong, right? That's how much of not a cult we are, right? I'm on here defending Black Hammer after they've attacked us and said vicious things about them. I understand who the enemy is, and it ain't the RCP, and it ain't Sincera Taylor, and it ain't Black Hammer. It's U.S. imperialism. It's Wall Street. It's London. And it needs to be said. It needs to be said. So forgive the lengthy rant. It just needed to be said, folks. Thank you for everything. All right, let's do the roll call, names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations, and we'll do the roll call. We will do the roll call. And then after I do the roll call, I will start answering your super chat questions. So if you've got more super chats, just send them my way, and let's do the roll call. We got Sophia in Michigan. Shout out to you, Sophia. We got Dave LaViolet in Minnesota. We got Melbourne, Australia, UK. Micah in Las Vegas. Chaya in Montreal. Colin in Greensboro. Arturo from Alaska. Rice in Adelaide, Australia, MJ in California, Oklahoma City, Jack in Alabama, Enoch from Australia, Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati, Victoria, Australia, Beirut, Lebanon, Hussein. We got Tim La Junta. We got Steve and Ann in Georgia. We got Ian Nix. We got Kieran from San Diego. Shout out to you. We got Abel Malcolm in Milwaukee. We got Montreal. We got John McCarthy in Chicago. Shout out to you, John. John is awesome. I got to meet John at the Jimmy Dore show. That was awesome. We got Dan from Indiana. We got Central New York. Very good stuff. We got Comrade Dilno Mraz in Ottawa. We got Mark in Utica. We got Heidi. We got Aga Einstein. Very, very, very good. We got Toronto, Canada. Comrade Johnsky. We got Alberta. Union County, New Jersey. We got Yihao, Taiwan, China. We got Ferris from Bromley. We got Gabby Hernandez from Chicago. Shout out to you and your amazing son. You're awesome, Gabby. It was so good we could meet. We got Chris in Salt Lake City. Shout out to you. Awesome to talk to you, Chris. Good to have you on here. We got Jamie Nix in St. Paul. We got Zachariah in Seattle. We got Michael from Brazil. We got Kelly from Maine. We got St. Paul, Jamie Nix. We got Zachariah in Seattle. Yada Yisrael in Chicago. CJ in Chicago. You're awesome, CJ. CJ makes amazing signs, folks. I don't know if you've seen. CJ is like a really skilled sign maker. This guy like makes these elaborate, like I sometimes I wonder if he has a degree in engineering or something. He makes these amazing signs. You should see the signs that CJ makes. CJ rides around Chicago on his bike. He's an awesome dude. We love you, CJ. So glad to have you as part of our community. I can't wait to get back to Chicago to see you. You're really, really great. We got Juan in Ecuador. We got Charlie in Boston, Minneapolis. We got Mark from California. He's thanking me. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you. Minneapolis, great stuff tonight, says Morgan. Good stuff. Bergen County, Northern New Jersey. Very, very good. Very, very, very good. All right, folks. All right. So we're going to start answering super chat questions. First super chat question is, what do I think of Sukarno in Indonesia? He was a great revolutionary leader in the early 60s. You had a socialist president aligned with the Communist Party. He was elected a leader of Indonesia. He had programs for low-income folks, providing healthcare and education. He actually went as far as building his own like communist wing of the military. And in 1965, the CIA overthrew him. The CIA couped Sukarno and installed a brutal military dictatorship. And Barack Obama's stepfather was a high-ranking military officer who was heavily involved in those events. It was pretty awful. And Barack Obama's stepfather, Lolo Sutaro, was involved in the coup in Indonesia. 500,000 people were slaughtered. The CIA provided the Indonesian military with a list of Communist Party members, and they were all dragged out and killed. And then they just started killing the whole communities. And in Indonesia, the ethnically Chinese were overly represented among the communists. So they just started killing entire neighborhoods and committing genocide against ethnically Chinese people in Indonesia. It is one of the greatest crimes against humanity in the 20th century was the U.S.-backed coup in Indonesia. 500,000 people dead. And the setting up of the military. And then later that government in Indonesia committed genocide against the people of East Timor. The island of East Timor, they declared independence from Indonesia. And so then the Indonesian military went in there and slaughtered everybody. Absolutely horrendous. And Sukarno was a great revolutionary leader. Pelosi in Taiwan. All right. We'll talk about that. Thanks, American Autopsy. One of these days, I'm going to be able to stream with you. Sorry about the delay. I've just never been as busy as I am now. I didn't even go to Nicaragua. I was invited, but I just couldn't make it. But Lily's there representing us, doing a great job. I'm just overwhelmed. After Chicago, things will slow down for me. But there you go. All righty. Pelosi, Taiwan visit. But yeah, you know, the Indonesia, 1965, brutal military coup. Deirdre Griswold of the Workers' World Party. What is it? She wrote actually a short book about it, which is, the whole book is online. I think I'll link it here. You know, you can learn the facts about it. Indonesia, the second greatest crime of the century. And I'm just linking, if you want to learn a lot of details about what went on in Indonesia, here you go. This is a whole book that was put out by the Workers' World Party in 1965. It was like an ideological pamphlet about the coup in Indonesia. So there you go. I just dropped it in the chat. So there you go. You can read all about it, etc. All right. Next question. Why did Kyle Rittenhouse get off so easy? Did he? I mean, for the rest of his life, everyone's going to know him as Kyle Rittenhouse, the guy who went to a protest and shot a bunch of people, right? You know, the details of the case, you know, are confusing to say the least. You know, when I first heard about the case, I was like, fuck that guy. You know, he went to a protest to shoot some people. Fuck that guy. But, you know, as it came out, I mean, he didn't kill black people, and, you know, it may have been a situation. I just don't know the facts of the case well enough to comment on the case, but I did swallow my words, because the way the mainstream media presented it, you would have thought this was just some, you know, redneck who sat there and he saw there was a protest and he was mad about it. So he went, all right, I'm going in there to kill me some leftists. So that's not what happened. Now, maybe he was wrong to do what he did. I honestly don't know the details of the case well enough. You know, I would think that if there's a protest going on, the last thing you should ever do is get your gun and go there. Right. That's my opinion. You know, so I'm not a fan of Kyle Rittenhouse, but I'm not one of the people that thinks he, you know, and I will say that it's one of those cases where, you know, as the details started to come out, questions emerged, and, you know, you weren't allowed to ask those questions. Right. I mean, you know, so, you know, it's just, I am so disgusted with the mainstream left that I'm more open to criticism of these kind of cases than I have been before. I would have been before. Let me put it that way. I'm not saying, I will say what sickens me is the way he's being made into a hero. You know, I mean, you know, and I don't think anyone who's making him a hero, that's completely out of line. He's not a hero. All right. Now, is he a murderer? I don't know. But he's not a hero. I'll tell you that much. All right. Are people falling into the trap of movementism when it comes to Canadian truckers and trap of movementism when it comes to truckers and Dutch farmers? I'll talk about that. All righty. So I'm just at the point where, you know, I don't know, you know, you know, at first I was just like, fuck that guy. But then the more I looked into it, I was like, there might be more here. And, you know, there you go. One thing I do know is that making that issue a priority, that's what CNN made a priority. So there you go. All right. The Red Dean of Canterbury. I know about it, you know, a very prominent British individual who was pro-Soviet and, you know, sympathetic to Marxism in Britain in the 1950s. But I can't give you the whole story on him. I am not an expert on the story. I know he's written a few books that are good sources on the Soviet Union. He was a prominent religious figure in Britain that was pro-Soviet in like the 1950s and 60s, if I'm not mistaken. So there you go. Is it ever okay to be a Trotskyite? Well, what does that mean? Is it ever okay to be a Trotskyite? I mean, I was a Trotskyite at one time. I was wrong. I think Trotsky's political line was not correct. The permanent revolution is not correct. Trotskyism is counter-revolutionary. It incarnates some of the elements of what we now call the synthetic left, the aesthetic of permanent revolution, of wanting chaos, Eurocentrism. I believe Trotsky ultimately rejected the main thesis of Bolshevism, which was that imperialism is the main question in our time, and that socialism was going to come into the world in the 20th century by countries breaking out of imperialism. I think that's kind of Trotsky missed the boat. He was Eurocentric. His theory of permanent revolution focuses on spreading revolution to the West. So there you go. Are neocons the synthetic right in 2022? I mean, if you're still a neocon, I pity you. I mean, most of the neocons are just turning into liberals now, right? I believe Bill Kristol is a supporter of Joe Biden. Bill Kristol, the son of Irving Kristol, the father of neoconservatism. Most of the neocons are just turning into liberals because that's what the imperialists are pushing right now. I mean, among the neocons that are still left, the Republican Party is starting to become dominated by more alternative, populistic right-wing elements. I mean, if you're looking for like people that are just still prominent neocons, Mitt Romney, right? I guess he's still a neocon, right? Because you can't be a neocon for Trump, right? Trump was a populist. Trump appealed to anti-establishment sentiments, and neoconservatism is all about, my country right or wrong. If the United States is great, the wars are great, overthrow anti-imperialist governments, and that, even though Trump did that as a president, he very much, tried to appeal to isolationist sentiments, libertarian sentiments, etc. So, anyone who's still a neocon, I pity you, because neoconservatism had its last hurrah with the Bush administration. By the time Bush was leaving office, neoconservatism was dead. Wokeism is the main current of imperialist politics at this point, I would say. All right. Why did Richard Spencer's movement die? Okay. That's an interesting question. Why did Richard Spencer's movement die? All right. So there you go. All right. The synthetic left says all cops are bastards until they take out their enemies. That's exactly right. I mean, that's how it works, right? In the United States, they all cheered for the shooting of what was her name? The woman who got killed on January 6th, the Trump supporter protester woman who got shot. She didn't deserve to die. Ashley Babbitt, she didn't deserve to die. I don't agree with what she was doing. She was trespassing. She didn't have a right to be in the Capitol. She was vandalizing. She was breaking a window. That's, criminal. She didn't have the right to do that. She should have been arrested for that and charged. But they didn't have the right to murder her. We don't have the death penalty in America for trespassing. We don't have the death penalty in America for breaking a window. And the fact that she was summarily executed, that because she was in the Capitol without permission, because she broke a window, a Capitol police officer, who they won't release the name of, decided that he then had the right to take out his gun and be her judge, jury, and executioner and blow her away and kill her. That's wrong. And I mean, of course, it would have been a lot worse. She would have gotten killed a lot sooner if she was black. Absolutely. And of course, she was breaking the law. And, it's not comparable to a black person who just reaches for their wallet, obviously. But I'm sorry. Thank you, Mateo. I appreciate the super chat. I can't, in good conscience, say that police don't have the right to murder George Floyd and say they do have the right to murder Ashley Babbitt. I'm sorry. I have to be consistent. And I don't agree with Ashley Babbitt. She would probably want to kill me for being a dirty, rotten commie. Doesn't matter, right? The police don't have the right to kill you if you're breaking and entering, right? They don't have the right. About the history of anti-populism, the people know. He'd be okay. We'll talk about Thomas Frank. I read one of his other books. I'm sorry, but I can't in good conscience say that Ashley Babbitt deserved to die just because she was part of a right-wing rally. I mean, I'm sorry. That's just not, It's not true. It's just not consistent. And I would be a hypocrite if I was saying the police were wrong to summarily murder George Floyd, to summarily murder, a black man, because they thought he had a gun. They felt threatened. That's what they said about Ashley Babbitt. They felt threatened. She broke a window. Boom. She dies. Doesn't work that way. No. You don't have the right to kill somebody because they broke a window. No, it's not how it works. Not how it works. I don't know enough about that. I can't comment on it, but thank you. But there you go. Are soldiers part of the proletariat? Yes, they are. The military are part of the working class. They are absolutely part of the working class. And, they are our brothers. And this anti-soldier stuff, right? I mean, get rid of it. I have never seen anything like this. I grew up my whole life. Let me just put it this way. My whole childhood, I heard stories about the Vietnam War. And I heard that no one should ever protest a war ever again because these dirty, rotten hippies who were protesting the Vietnam War spit on the soldiers and they disrespected the country. And I was just barraged with all this stuff about the anti-war movement. We're all disrespecting our troops and all of that. And that was all a bunch of bullshit. And the Vietnam War, they recruited the soldiers. I'm sorry, the anti-war movement didn't spit on soldiers. It recruited them. The Vietnam Veterans Against the War, which was run by the Revolutionary Communist Party, the group that's just being canceled. They were called the RU back then. They ran Vietnam Veterans Against the War, which was led by John Kerry. His views changed pretty quick. He became a mainstream liberal. And the American Servicemen's Union, the ASU, that was run by the Workers' World Party, had thousands and thousands of members. And Jane Fonda, they always hear about, Jane Fonda was against the country. Jane Fonda went around to U.S. Army bases in other countries, in Okinawa, in Japan, the colonized island of Okinawa. She went to Okinawa. She went to South Korea, and she did like concerts aimed at soldiers, urging them not to fight in the Vietnam War. And she dedicated herself to GI resistance during the Vietnam War. And the anti-war movement wasn't going around spitting on soldiers; it was going around recruiting them. So that was all a bunch of bullshit. So yeah, that didn't happen, right? They weren't spitting on soldiers. They weren't disrespecting them. You know what I mean? That didn't happen. Okay, Lincoln Project. All right. Didn't happen. So what bothers me is that now I'm on the internet, right? And there's a guy who's a big leader of the PSL. He doesn't agree with me. I don't agree with him, but whatever. His name is Mike Preisner. He's an anti-war soldier. He's an Iraq veteran who came back and protested the war. And I see all these like internet people going, he's a murderer. He's a baby kid. I'm like, are you out of your mind? We need guys like him who are in the military to say what the military actually does, to say the war is wrong, because that's what they always use. They say, you can't criticize this war because somebody, my brother's in the war. You can't criticize it. No, if your brother's in the war, you should be criticizing it. You, if anybody, should want your brother not to get shot for American oil profits and big corporations and banks. U.S. military pours billions into the military apparatus, but doesn't give vets to homeless vets. Anti-soldier posturing doesn't help. Exactly, Morgan. Exactly. And the idea that the people in the military are our enemies, that anyone who wears a uniform is a fascist, throw that trash out. The people in the military are more against the wars than average people are at this point. Did you know that? The people in the military are at this point more against the wars than average Americans are. And folks, I got to tell you, this might not sound like what you want to hear, but Tulsi Gabbard, she comes out of the U.S. military, and she's the most anti-war member of Congress. I mean, she's not in Congress anymore, but she was the most anti-war member of Congress, and she's from the military. And Ron Paul got a huge amount of support from the U.S. military. Do anti-imperialism and isolation walk hand in hand? All right. And folks, there are probably a lot of people in the military that are wondering why the U.S. government is acting like Al-Qaeda's air force and supporting Al-Qaeda in Syria and overthrowing Gaddafi, who was Al-Qaeda's great enemy. And folks, I feel like if there's going to be hope for the United States, LBS and this is on. there's going to be hope for the United States, probably going to come from the military. And that sounds weird, right? And it's not coming for any time soon. But as the crisis intensifies, a couple years down the road, I'm thinking that it might be that some of these Pentagon brass guys, because their money comes from the government, because the military industrial complex is propped up by the government, because they have more of an isolationist perspective, there might be a faction of the military that becomes full-on anti-imperialist. I'm just saying, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But I'm talking about down the road. Because of the role the U.S. military plays in the U.S. economy, I'm telling you, if there's any section of the U.S. power elite, the big oil companies are not going to become anti-imperialist. The banks are not going to become anti-imperialist. Silicon Valley ain't going to become anti-imperialist. But I'm telling you, folks, that it may be that a section of the U.S. military comes over to the side of anti-imperialism. And that might happen. So think about it, folks. Think about it. This attitude that leftists have, the military are our enemies and all of that. Well, we're against the wars. And we would not encourage any working class person to sign up to fight their wars. We wouldn't encourage that. But the soldiers are not our enemies. The soldiers are more in agreement with us than average Americans are. They're against these wars. And ultimately, when the storm comes, when the crisis comes, it might ultimately be a section of the military that is the largest current of anti-imperialism within the U.S. power structure. Might happen. I know it's hard to believe, but it very well might happen. So soldiers are definitely part of the proletariat. We need to make friends with soldiers. We need to welcome them into our movement. I gave a speech at my talk at the Austin conference. I talked about a good friend of mine who joined the military. So yeah, I think the military could play a very positive role in the USA in the near future. I know that's not a popular thing for leftists to say, but I'm telling you, as weird as politics are getting in America, the military might ultimately play a very good role in U.S. history in 10 or 15 years. So there you go. State will always come after black liberation leaders. Absolutely. They went after Elijah Muhammad. They went after Malcolm X. They went after Marcus Garvey. They went after Martin Luther King Jr. They went after Fred Hampton. I mean, yes, they did, right? Is Viktor Orban a populist or a fascist? Neither. Viktor Orban is a conservative. He's a right-winger, and he's kind of a bourgeois nationalist. He's much more independent than most of the governments in Europe. And that's why they hate him. He's much more friendly to Russia, and he's not, a team player in the NATO thing. He's a little more independent-minded. That's why they can't stand him. He's not a socialist. He's not an anti-imperialist. He goes whichever way. He's kind of like Erdogan in Turkey. He's kind of like Modi in India. He goes either way, depending on what's in his interest. Thoughts on the punch a Nazi, punch a fascist slogan? Awful. Look. Here's the thing. The problem with this punch a Nazi, punch a fascist stuff is that it's like it made sense in the 1930s, okay? Because in the 1930s, you had you had the labor movement. Socialists, communists had labor unions. And so you had fascists who mobilized like armed groups that were going around shooting down workers. So the debate became, do we want the government to protect the labor unions? Do we want the government to protect the black people from the Klan and from the Nazis and the Silver Legion or whatever? Or do we want to form armed self-defense groups and fight them ourselves? And obviously, communists, the correct position would be to, let people defend themselves, right? People ought to be able to defend themselves. Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun, etc. We believe in the right of people to defend themselves when they're under attack. So you have the Battle of Cable Street, when there was going to be a Nazi fascist parade through a Jewish neighborhood in London in 1936. And Oswald Mosley, who was a big Hitler supporter, was going to march through a Jewish neighborhood. And, the communists of Britain, they said, you shall not pass. You shall not pass. And they fought Oswald Mosley, the Battle of Cable Street. That's all good stuff. I admire that. But nowadays, I'm sorry, Trump supporters are not Nazis. Trump supporters are not Nazis, and right now, Nazis are not going around murdering people. Yes, you have guys who get into Nazism on the internet and have their psychotic break and shoot up their school, but that's not the same thing, right? That's random violence. They're shooting people of their own race, usually. their own race, their own ethnicity from their own town because they're having a psychotic meltdown, and admiring brutal mass murderers like Hitler and espousing racist hate is part of their psychotic meltdown. But they're not part of an organized group. All right. That's different. Right. But armed Nazis, Richard Spencer's group was not going around killing people. The David Duke fan club and all that. These folks represent an ideological threat. That's what they represent. That instead of working class people understanding the problem is capitalism, the problem is U.S. imperialism, they're told by these groups the problem is Jews. Instead of organizing themselves as workers, they're told by these groups to organize themselves on the basis of their race, to organize as white men, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's fascism. We reject that. We're not interested in anti-Semitism or ethnic bigotry. We're interested in scientific Marxism. We're not interested in organizing the whites or the blacks or the Asians. We're interested in organizing the working class, right? Okay. Writing it down. That's just what we're doing. So they're an ideological threat. They're not a violent threat. This isn't Oswald Mosley, who's on the brink of taking power in Britain, who's murdering Jews in the streets and breaking strikes with his black shirt gangs. It's not what's going on, right? They're an ideological threat. And if someone's arguing with you and you throw the first punch, that's like a confession that the other person is right, right? I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're having an argument and rather than answering back, you throw the first punch, it's almost like you're conceding the argument. And that's what Antifa does. Right? They put on their black masks so no one can see who they are, and they just attack these people. And it seems so revolutionary and all of that. But I'm sorry, as someone who works in the media, it helps them. They look like victims. Their message still gets out. Meanwhile, there's no response to it. Really, what the Antifa stuff is about, I'll tell you what it's really about. The Antifa stuff is about the fact that the liberal order does not want there to be a left-wing response to it. That's what they want. They want it to be liberal order versus Nazis. You can either be a liberal or a Nazi. They don't want there to be a real Marxist-Leninist socialist response to this stuff. They don't want the politics of Jimmy Dore out there. They don't want the politics of the Center for Political Innovation out there. So they want to say you're either with the Nazis or you're with people who wear black masks and go around violently beating them up. And it's because they want to suppress debate. That's really all they want to do. Right? Most people are never going to become Nazis because Nazism is reprehensible. But they'd much rather have people become Nazis than have them become anti-imperialists, communists, leftists, socialists, and revolutionaries. And it's about constraining the debate to that. Plus, I will add that, I used to believe in the Antifa stuff. There was a time where I said, they don't give us our freedom, so why should we give them theirs? And, I was all about that stuff. And I look back on it now, when did I start changing? When all of a sudden people on the internet started calling me a Nazi. And I'm like, but I'm not a Nazi. I'm a lifelong anti-racist. No, I'm a Nazi because of Syria, because of Russia, because I support the people of the Donbass region. All of a sudden, I'm being called a Nazi. I'm afraid to go into left spaces. People are threatening me on the internet, saying, if you come to a protest, Caleb, we're going to punch you in the face. And all of a sudden, I'm like, but I agree with you guys. I'm promoting Marxism. No, Caleb's a Nazi. That made me think, if they want to punch me, even though I'm married to someone who's not white, even though I risked my life on a ship trying to bring medical aid to Yemen, even though I video recorded acts of police brutality in Cleveland that got people of color acquitted in court cases. If I'm a Nazi, then what the fuck does Nazi mean? It just means anyone who doesn't agree with the woke cult, right? That's all it means. And then that made me think, and I'm like, wow. And that the reason that I was being called a Nazi is because I actually understand Marxism. You're not allowed to understand Marxism. You're allowed to understand, if you hear me clap once, if you hear me clap twice, if you hear me clap 3 times, now we're going to sit in a circle and talk about why you have to vote for Biden or else you're racist. That's what they want. And if you don't think that crap, somehow you're the same as a Nazi. Well, you're not the same as a Nazi, but they want to make you think that. And that's why they want to shut down the debate. They want the only response to Nazis to be people in black masks who attack them. And the Nazis get their ideas out there and their awful ideas that most people are never going to agree with. And they say, all right, are you with them or are you against them? And that's how they settle it. It's about suppressing debate. That's what it's really about. In the 1930s, when there was a real struggle for power by armed fascist groups and workers were taking up guns to defend themselves, it was a totally different situation. So don't project the Battle of Cable Street onto what these people are doing now, right? That's not the same thing at all. That is not the same thing at all, right? I uphold the Battle of Cable Street. I loathe Oswald Mosley. I uphold the workers' defense militias, the workers' defense guards that fought to protect labor unions on the picket line and fought against the Silver Legion and fought against the fascists of the 1930s. But what Antifa is doing right now, not good. It helps the fascists and it suppresses real leftism and it prevents a real debate. Right now, these folks are an ideological threat. They're not they're not going to take power. They're not a military threat. And they're not on the brink of taking power. They're an ideological threat. That's what they are. And they're not that anymore either. I think that experiment is over. All right. What do I think of Pelosi's upcoming visit to Taiwan? The USA is doing everything it can to provoke China. That's what I think about it. And this is yet another move to provoke China. She's not the head of state, so it doesn't count as recognition. But it is really... They want to force China into a situation where China feels like to maintain its credibility, they have to invade Taiwan. That's what they're trying to do. All right. Taiwan is part of China and, one country, two systems, but they want to force China in a situation where China militarily has to send its military onto the island of Taiwan. And then they can do to China what they're doing to Russia right now. And economically isolate them. Right. That's what they're trying to do. And why do we need a new war? It's not in humanity's interest. It's in the interest of Wall Street and their drive to maintain a monopoly and beat down any competition. And it's not good. Next question. The trap of movementism when it comes to truckers and Dutch farmers. Well, look, the ideology that these truckers and Dutch farmers are espousing is wrong, right? We can agree on that, they're right wing, they're conservatives, they're Modi's support for US, UK, and France against China. They're conservatives, they're right wing, they're they're not ideologically where we're at. But what is the issue in their protests? In the Dutch farmers, it's their protest, they want to grow food. And in Canada, they oppose the vaccine mandates, and they as workers, they want to reject the mandates. Well, they're right on the issue of the protest. The vaccine mandates are an insult to the workers. The workers have the right to reject, the government imposing medical stuff on them. I'm vaccinated. COVID is certainly real. I'm vaccinated, and I've also had COVID, so I'm not a COVID denier, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer. But workers have the right to say, no, my employer and the government don't have the right to make me take a vaccine, right? I'm against the mandates, right? The same with the Dutch farmers. During a global food crisis, we shouldn't be reducing food output. Look at Sri Lanka. Is that a good situation? Obviously not. So, they're right on the issue. But because the left are just shills of the establishment, because of that, there's this assumption, nope, they're right wing. We got to oppose them. Well, we should be going to them and winning them to socialism. And it's not going to be easy. We should have done that with the Tea Party. We should, the problem with leftists is that when there's a liberal uprising, when there's a liberal mobilization, they go to it and they just cheer for it. They go, yay. Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street. They just applaud for it. That's not doing your job. You need to be winning them to socialism, pointing out that the answer is not, that ultimately socialism is the answer. You need to be exposing the liberals. Right. So you're not doing your job if you just cheer for a liberal mobilization. And then if it's a right wing mobilization, they just attack it. They say, oh, they're right wing. They're bad. Well, you're not doing your job. Yeah, they have right wing ideology. Your job is to convince them that the right wing ideology is wrong and win them to socialism. So if you just attack right wing movements and you just tail liberal movements, you're not accomplishing anything. Go read What Is to Be Done. You're not intervening if you do that. Our job is to win working class people to socialism, to put forward a program to mobilize the proletariat to fight in its own interests. And if we boycott right-wing movements and if we tail liberal movements, we don't accomplish that. So there you go. It's that simple. All right. Why did Richard Spencer's movement die? Because there's no such thing as a white person. There's no such thing as a white person. Define a white person for me. White person is a privilege. That's all it is, right? If you're white in the United States, it means you're not black. It means you're not brown. It means you're not Asian. It means you're not Arab. White people in the United States, they are not a nation. They have no national characteristics, right? There are Catholic white people and Protestant white people. There are English-speaking white people and Spanish-speaking white people. There are white people who speak Polish in the United States. There are white people that are Jewish in the United States. There are white people that are Eastern European. There are white people whose family came over 200 years ago. There's white people who just moved here from Britain a week ago. There is no such thing as a white person. So trying to build a movement about white people is it's just in and of itself, it's stupid, right? And you can say, oh, we're fighting for a nation and all that. That's not what you're doing. You're reacting to Black people protesting police brutality. You're reacting to immigrants coming here. You're playing into what they call white backlash or reaction. That's what you're doing, right? You're playing into white people becoming uneasy with marginal groups becoming more visible, asserting their interests more. That's really what he was doing, right? And he might say, if you listen to Spencer, it sounded different or whatever, but that's all bullshit, right? At the end of the day, if you're organizing a white nationalist movement, all you're doing is you're mobilizing backlash and reaction to oppressed groups asserting themselves. And the Black people who talk about police brutality are right. And the immigrant communities that are terrorized by these ICE raids, they have a right to assert their rights and just to oppose the ICE raids. They shouldn't have to come here. It's because of U.S. imperialism. We ultimately need to end neoliberalism, and we need to build the Sandino-Zapata economic corridor and end the economic crisis in Central America and South America, and Mexico, in order to prevent people having to flee their homes and become economic refugees. We need to stop spreading chaos around the world so that people can't live in their countries. There's a real problem with mass migration, but the solution is anti-imperialism and socialism, not build a giant wall. And it's certainly not ICE raids, and it's not kicking down doors, and all the problems that the right wing gets mad about will be made worse, right? The ICE raids and the anti-immigrant regulations are the best friend of those groups, right? The harder you make it for people to legally cross the border, the more that they're going to have to use illegal means to cross the border. The more you make immigrant families and communities afraid to call the police, the more those groups are going to be able to set up shop in immigrant neighborhoods. Look, if immigrant children are afraid that their parents may not be there when they come home from school, that leads to a community that is going to be afraid. And, MS-13 and all these criminal gangs that these folks are so worried about, that's how they set up. When immigrant communities are pushed into the shadows, when they're afraid, that's where these groups flourish, right? And they've already caught the groups building the wall, building Trump's wall, were already caught involved with these groups smuggling people into the country. So, no, people are going to keep coming because of economic mobilization. Making it harder is only going to make the problems of criminal organizations, of drug gangs, et cetera, worse. So I'm sorry, but all the things that the anti-immigrant folks, the white nationalists that are anti-immigrant, all the things that they want, more ICE raids, more deportations, big giant wall, all of that will make all the things they're mad about with immigration worse. The drug gangs will get worse. The violence and illegal activity around the border will get worse. The wages of immigrant workers will go down because, immigrant workers are entitled to a minimum wage. Did you know that? Whether you're documented or undocumented in the United States, you have minimum wage. However, why do undocumented workers get paid minimum wage? Because are they going to go call the Department of Labor and be like, hey, my employer's ripping me off? Of course not. They're not going to do that. Why? Because they're undocumented. They don't want to get deported, right? So if you make them more afraid and you force them into the shadows, employers are going to get away with paying them less, right? The war on immigrant workers, feeds into, the more afraid you make immigrant workers, the lower their pay is going to be. You say immigrant workers make the wages go down. Well, that'll get worse if you make more restrictions on them. Now, won't it? Right? I mean, it's like all the things that the right wing say they're mad about immigration because of, get made worse by all the things the right wing does about immigration. So there you go. Yes, it's a great book. I talked about it a couple streams ago. Great book, great set of 3 books. So the right wing don't know what they're talking about. Richard Spencer's movement, it was an attempt to build some kind of white nationalist, white supremacist movement. And it failed because that's a dead ideology, right? Because there's no such thing as a white person in America. There's no white nation. And at the end of the day, they were just kind of, they may have started out as shills of Trump, and useful to the Trump wing of the bourgeoisie. And then ultimately they became the rodeo clowns, the scarecrows, for the liberals. The liberals would hold them up. See, Trump has not. And the liberals were using them to hurt Trump, basically. They were just, scare porn for liberals. So, they had really no purpose to play, right? They're irrelevant. And, they're going their different ways. I know a lot of them are becoming traditionalist Catholics now, and some of them are becoming, I think there's Nick Fuentes in America First. They're going their own way, but white nationalism as an ideology in the United States has no future, right? There are definitely right-wing currents that have a future, but white nationalism and Richard Spencer are not one of them. All right. Thomas Frank on populism. Yes, I read his book. It was a literal psyop, and you may be right about that. You may be right. I mean, he's an awful dude. I am not a friend of his, not an admirer of his, white supremacist. And I had the opportunity to debate him, and I decided not to. Because I've listened to his debates before. I debated a white nationalist named Augustus Invictus, and I'm glad I debated him. I'm proud of everything I said in that debate, but I wouldn't debate Spencer. I wouldn't get anything out of it. All right. So Thomas Frank's book on populism. I read his book, What's the Matter with Kansas? I haven't read that one. But I like Thomas Frank. He's right about populism. The future of the left is populism. And any update on Jackson Hinkle? Well, he's kicked off of social media. I've reached out to him. I want to support him. I hope to hear from him soon because I am a big fan of Jackson Hinkle. I like what he's doing. I know he's on Rumble now, and I'm a huge supporter of his. So there you go. All righty. Very good. The Lincoln Project. That was an attempt to get Republicans and conservatives to support Biden. It was like neocon Democrats, basically, right? Supporting the wars, accusing Trump of being a traitor who likes the commies, right? That's, stupid. There you go. Do anti-imperialism and isolationism walk hand in hand? Well, what's isolationism? If by isolationism you mean just not invading countries, right? Imperialism is a global economic system. It's not a policy. It's not a synonym for militarism. Imperialism is a global economic system. And isolationism is the perspective the United States should cut itself off from the rest of the world. Well, imperialism is this global setup of capitalism. Isolationism is the USA shouldn't mess around the world. Ultimately, there's an alternative to isolationism that's not global monopoly capitalism. It's the new emerging economy, right? Win-win cooperation, the Belt and Road, the new form of globalization that's coming out of China and Russia and the Eurasian Economic Union, the BRICS, the Belt and Road Initiative, the Bolivarian alternative for Latin America. They're doing a form of globalization that is very different, and that we're going to have trade with different countries, but it needs to be done on a different scale. And this global capitalist system where big banks and monopolies in Western countries dominate the world, that is something that I oppose. And isolationism is just this vague idea we shouldn't be involved in other countries. All right, next question. Do you watch any of the Amazon union hearings? I haven't had a chance, Chaya. I haven't had a chance. I've got so much going on right now, but you're updating people on them, and good for you. That's important. People need to know about it. Maybe, Chaya, I want to invite you, if you're willing, perhaps you could write an article for the CPI website about those hearings, because it's very important what goes on in those hearings. So I'm glad you're following it. I wish I had the time to follow it. I can only do so many things in a day. All righty. ILPS and Jose Maria Sison. Well, back when I was in the Workers' World Party, I went to a lot of protests with folks that were involved with that. I know that right now they initially supported Duterte when he first got elected, but now I don't know exactly where they line up internationally now, but I know they're very anti-China at this point, which is too bad and disappointing. But then again, they represent an armed group that is in a country engaged in an armed struggle, and I don't know what they're up to right now. I haven't followed them in a long time. I don't know what they're doing these days, but I've heard that they're in an anti-China frenzy, and that's not good. It's not good because the U.S. imperialists are a way bigger threat to the people of the Philippines than China is. All right. Why did Mosley like syndicalist economics? Well, that's a bit of a stretch. I mean, there is a weird continuity between Sorelian syndicalism and fascism. You had, national syndicalism in Spain with Franco. You had Mussolini, who drew heavily from George Sorel, said he owed everything to George Sorel. So there is a continuity there, but Mosley's economics, syndicalism is a variant of the socialist movement that focuses on building labor unions that rejects all politics. Mosley's economic plans, which I've read, are not that. Mosley's economic plans are, heavy Keynesianism, government control of corporations, a lot like Mussolini's Italy. Those are his economic plans. It's not syndicalism, but it draws from that. And I think that there's an attachment to some of the ideas that Sorel put out, building a group of fanatics, appealing to nationalism and the monarchy and like right-wing traditionalism to build some kind of violent movement, of the working class or something. You can say there's a continuity there between Sorelian syndicalism and Mosley, but Mosley is not a syndicalist. That's not accurate. All right. Modi's support for the U.S., UK, and France against China. Well, Mosley's not. Modi is not consistent on that, but for the most part, Modi. There is a long-standing border rivalry between India and China. Modi represents an anti-China current in India's politics. The Indian right wing tends to be very anti-China. Modi is not a socialist or a revolutionary. He's not an anti-imperialist. Now, he's a little bit more of a bourgeois nationalist. When the USA makes him a deal, he'll go one way. When Russia and China make him a deal, he'll go another way. He's not always anti-China, but for the most part, he is. He tends to, go along with the United States and their anti-China crusades. So there you go, folks. There you go. All right, folks, I'm at the end of my rope. I'm tired, and we're out of super chats. It's been fun. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression, but the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. Good night, folks. Good night.